this Maimer, Veata Tetzaveh, that the Rebbe delivered in February of 1981 and distributed it 11 years later in February of 1992, just 2 weeks or even less prior to him having fallen ill. The Rebbe lays out in this Maimer, it's a classic, and he discusses in it the ultimate function of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, of not just the first Moses, but the Moses of every generation. What is their ultimate function? And he says that their function, in the beginning he starts discussing this, he says that they're called in the Zohar the faithful shepherd. Moses is called the faithful shepherd, but it's also explained that not only the faithful shepherd usually means that he's so dedicated and he's so faithful that he cares for everyone unconditionally and he's dedicated to everyone, etc. But it also means more than that. It means not just the faithful shepherd, but the shepherd of faith. That he feeds the Jewish, just like a shepherd feeds, it brings his flock to the grass, to graze, and and he feeds them with whatever they need to eat. The same thing, the shepherd of the Jewish people, Moses feeds the Jewish people with their faith. To make that their faith should not just be some abstract concept, but that it should become personal and real. And how does he do this? By revealing the essence of the soul of every Jew. Now, right after he explains, now the Rebbe, in his discourse, is quoting the previous Rebbe, his father-in-law, who delivered a Maimer in 1927 on this topic, and he explains in this Maimer, he draws upon many of the concepts in the Maimer and the discourse of his father-in-law. And he quotes his father-in-law as explaining in his discourse this idea of the ultimate function of Moses. And he says that after the previous Rebbe discusses at great length the idea of Moses, he explains another topic, which is the famous words in the verse with which he opens up this discourse, in which Moses is told by God that he should command the Jewish people to bring olive oil, that they should bring to Moses olive oil for the luminary, and that it should be it should be crushed for the luminary. They should crush. That basically means that they should crush the olives so that it can give light. It can be used for oil for the lamps for the lamps of the menorah in the temple. But over there, the question that the previous Rebbe asks, why doesn't it say crushed to illuminate? Why does it say crushed for the luminary? The luminary is the source of light, right? And he quotes the previous Rebbe as explaining that the reason it says the luminary is because, in the words of the previous Rebbe, that when a Jew is crushed in the times of Golus, in the times of exile, we're crushed by the non-Jewish environment that we're in, whether it's anti-Semitism, we're killed, we're persecuted. That when we're crushed, we are forced to the corner, right? And that brings out within us the deepest part of our soul, the moir, the luminary of our soul, the essence of our soul. So the Rebbe, in the end of chapter 3, questioned and asked, what is the connection between these two ideas that the previous Rebbe elaborates in his discourse? Number one, that Moshe is the faithful, the shepherd of faith, and that being crushed during exile causes us to get in touch with our own luminary. What's the connection? So that's where we were last week. The truth is we started chapter 4 already, but we didn't finish it properly, so we'll do it again. It's in English, so you can look inside, on page 38. Now, the interpretation of the verse, and you shall command, the verse in the Torah says that Moshe should command, right? That Moshe should command the Jewish people to bring oil for the luminary, right? For the menorah. So the question was, why are you telling me that Moshe should command? This is the God command. Moshe should relate the command, maybe. But what does it mean Moshe should command? And he answered that the word command also means Tetzaveh in Hebrew means connect. And it's Moshe's job as the Moses of the generation to connect the Jewish people with God. So he explains therefore the interpretation of the verse, and you shall command, appears in the discourse of the previous Rebbe following the concept discussed at the start of the discourse, namely that the meaning of the verse, and the Jews accepted what they began to observe, is that they accepted in the days of Achashverosh during Purim what they had begun at the time of Matan Torah to give at the giving of the Torah. To remind you, the previous Rebbe's discourse was said on Purim Cotton, on the Purim of 1927. So naturally, the discourse opens up with the verse in the Megillah of the story of Purim. What's the verse in the Megillah with which the previous Rebbe opens his discourse? With the words "V'kibel ha-Yehudim," that the Jewish people accepted. There's a verse in chapter 9 of the Megillah where it says, and the Jews accepted that which they begun to observe. What is the meaning of that verse in the Megillah? That during the story of Purim, they re-accepted. The Talmud says that they accepted in the days of Achashverosh what they had begun at the time of the giving of the Torah. That means the beginning time of the giving of the Torah was an acceptance of the Torah, but not fully. In the time of Achashverosh, 900 years later, they fully accepted it. So the previous Rebbe, in his discourse, begins to explain the idea of Moses following that which he explained in the beginning of his discourse, the meaning of this verse in the Megillah of Purim. In other words, he continues, at Matan Torah, there was only a beginning. They begun to observe. And the days of Achashverosh, during the period of Haman's persecution, there was an acceptance, and the Jews accepted. You follow? Now this interpretation is similar to the Talmudic interpretation of the verse. In the same Megillah, it says over there, the Jews established and accepted. The Talmud says they established what they had already accepted. When at Matan Torah, when the Torah was given, they said, we will do, before saying we will listen. They accepted to hold the Torah wholeheartedly. There was only an acceptance. In the days of Achashverosh, however, they established what they had accepted. So it's the same idea, it's a similar idea. But the question is there's an obvious question over here. As he says on the next page. The Rebbe points out in his discourse, in the previous Rebbe that is, that this seems to be wondrous. This makes no sense. For at the time of the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people were at the highest possible level. And they experienced divine revelation of the loftiest sort. All the miracles, the splitting of the sea, the 10 plagues. I mean, they saw God. In addition to the fact that even before the giving of the Torah, there were extremely lofty revelations. The revelation during the Exodus from Egypt, and especially during the splitting of the sea. The revelation during Matan Torah, during the giving of the Torah, was even greater. God came down on the mountain, spoke to the Jewish people. I mean, there was no greater revelation than that. By contrast, during the days of Achashverosh, the Jewish people were at the lowest of levels. During the story of Purim, there was no notion that you couldn't get lower. In addition to the usual divine concealment that prevails during any period of exile, God is concealed for every exile is similar to the Egyptian exile. And just as it is written of the Egyptian exile, and they did not hear Moses because of shortness of breath and harsh labor, and the rabbis explained that means that they were disconnected from Hashem. There was no revelation of God then. They didn't see God. In Egypt, they didn't see God at all, before the Exodus, that is. So the same is with every exile. Every exile resembles Egypt, in the sense that it's complete concealment from God. So it is similar. In every exile, there are many challenges to the observance of the Torah and mitzvahs. So that's true with every exile. But at the time during Haman's persecution, the story of Purim, the concealment was even greater. So you have over here, the contrast is incredible. During Matan Torah, they were at the highest spiritual level. During Purim, they were at the lowest spiritual level. Yet, at the time of Matan Torah, when the Jewish people were at the highest possible level, there was only the beginning. They began to observe. While during Haman's persecution, when they're at the lowest level, when they were at the lowest of levels, precisely then did they accept what they had begun at Matan Torah. Does this make any sense? It should be the other way around. When God's revealed, you accept. And when He's not revealed, you give it up. If anything. Over here, the opposite happened. When He was completely and fully revealed at the highest levels, then they accepted it a little bit. But when God is not revealed, that's when they accepted it fully. How could that be? So the Rebbe in his Maimer explains this wonder by saying that during the time of persecution, their observance of Torah and mitzvahs entailed self-sacrifice. When you're persecuted, there's only one way you can do the Torah and the mitzvahs. Being ready for self-sacrifice. It's not going to happen any other way. When they tell you if you're going to observe it, if you're going to remain Jewish, we're going to kill you. How do you remain Jewish? By being ready to be killed. Right? In addition to the fact that they exhibited self-sacrifice in not denying their religion, God forbid, during Purim, no one ever thought about giving up Judaism during the time of Haman. As explained in Torah 8, had they chosen to change their religion, they would not have been harmed. Haman gave the option. Give it up and we'll let you live. You know what the story of Haman is. Since the decree pertained only to Jews, the decree of annihilation was only against Jews. So if they would give up their being Jewish, they would not be annihilated. So there was that option. Yet, it says the rabbis tell us, even an extraneous heretical thought never even crossed their minds, God forbid. Didn't even cross their mind. Maybe I should give up Judaism. It never even crossed their mind. It means it's not only that they didn't actually consider it as a real possibility, it never even entered their mind. Maybe yeah, maybe not, and they then said no. It didn't even get into their mind. It wasn't even the fleeting thought. So besides that they were ready for self-sacrifice during Purim, they exhibited self-sacrifice for the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs, even to the extent of holding public gatherings to study Torah with self-sacrifice. It's not that they did it in hiding, and if they kill me, find me and they kill me, okay, but they did it in public. In your face. There was complete dedication and readiness for self-sacrifice. And the awakening of their sacrifice, how did they get such an incredible dedication and readiness to give up your life? Everyone. And the awakening of the self-sacrifice was caused by Mordechai the Jew, the Moses of his generation. Now see, it says, this then is the understanding of, and the Jews accepted what they had begun to observe. This answers the question why during Purim they accepted that which they only started accepting during Matan Torah. And we ask, how could this be? It doesn't make sense. And this is the answer. That Matan Torah, when God gave the Torah, there was only a beginning, and at the time of Haman's decree, there was the acceptance. Why? As a result of their actual self-sacrifice for Torah and mitzvahs, they ascended in regard to this matter to a loftier level than the level they were at during Matan Torah. It was therefore precisely then that the acceptance occurred and the Jews accepted. In other words, when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, there was no need for self-sacrifice. No one was challenging them. They were at the height of the world. Everyone was looking at, honoring them. The Jews were at the, top of the world. So then they accepted they accepted whatever God said. Okay, yeah, we'll do it. But it doesn't show yet that you're ready to do it through thick and thin. When the Jews were persecuted during the exile of Haman, and they were faced the threat of annihilation completely, if they continue to be Jews, and then Mordechai, with his incredible ability, arouses within the Jewish people that readiness for self-sacrifice. So in this respect, in this regard, they reached a higher level than they were at Matan Torah. We said before that Matan Torah they were on a much higher level than during Purim. He says that's not true. It depends with in what regard you're talking about. If you're talking about where they saw more godliness, yes, at Matan Torah they were on a much higher level. But if you're talking about where did they see much more of their own soul, and Purim they were a much higher level. And Purim they were in touch with their essence of their soul. They had no choice. Because to be Jewish during Purim, you had to connect with that deeper part of yourself, self-sacrifice. And self-sacrifice comes the readiness for self-sacrifice comes only as a result of being in touch with the deepest and the highest level of your soul. In that level, they were not in touch with during Matan Torah. You understand? You with me? Yep. It can apparently be said, next page, that the interpretation, now he gets back and explains the juxtaposition of the previous Rebbe's discourse, what he's explaining following, one follows the other. It can apparently be said that the interpretation of the previous Rebbe of the words crushed for the luminary, in which he explained that through kus is broken, when you're crushed and broken, we reach the luminary. Luminary is the source of light. That's in our case, he's explaining, we're talking about the neshama, the soul. There's the light of the soul and there's the luminary of the soul. What's the light of the soul? The part of the soul that shines in our body. What's the luminary, the source of the soul? The source of that light is the essence of the soul. When you're crushed, you reach the luminary. Let's see this again. It can apparently be said that the interpretation of crushed for the luminary, that through cutting, broken and crushed, we reach the luminary, is an explanation of the fact that precisely during the time of persecution, they reached an extremely lofty level of self-sacrifice. Because when you crush, you reach the luminary, and that brought them to a higher level than they were even at the giving of the Torah. You follow? So our previous Rebbe is going and explaining, the Rebbe is taking the previous Rebbe's discourse and explaining it line by line almost. What's the juxtaposition? What's going on over there? For self-sacrifice stems from the soul's essence. You want to look inside? You're not looking, Sharon?
No, I'm listening.
So you want to give them the book?
Yeah.
Could you just explain the difference between the light of the soul and the essence of the soul?
Yes. Let me just finish this few words and we'll explain it. Absolutely. For self-sacrifice stems from the soul's essence, which transcends revelation. The luminary, from which the light is derived. Look inside, you'll see it for yourself. And because they were then in a state of kus, broken and crushed, the soul's essence, the luminary, was revealed. However, all right, let's stop here for a second. What was your question?
difference between the light of the soul and the essence of the soul?
You came to learn today?
Yeah.
Why'd you come to learn today? Because you're Jewish.
Okay.
And you feel that a Jew should learn Torah. What made you have that feeling? Where does a Jew get that feeling from? His neshama. What part of the neshama gives you that feeling?
The essence?
No.
The light?
The light of the soul. The part of the soul that's enclosed in your body. It makes you function, allows you to function as a Jew. You don't need the essence to wake up on a Sunday morning in the middle of Weston and the sun is shining and it's a beautiful weather and there's a nice environment to come to, good people and hopefully a good rabbi that's giving the class. You don't need to have the essence of the soul to be revealed to get you to make this move. The lower levels of the soul are good enough to get you to move. Yes, you need a little push. It's nicer to sleep. Yeah, I mean, you can use a little sleep on a Sunday morning. So you needed a little bit of all right, let me get out of bed and go to sleep, go to shul and go to class. But for this, you don't need to access the deepest resources of your soul.
There's no self-sacrifice.
There's no self-sacrifice. There's a tiny sacrifice. You're giving up a little sleep.
You're not crushed.
You're not crushed. When a Yid is told by a Nazi, or by a Haman, or by a Roman, or by Stalin, you do this, and your wife is going to be a widow, and your kids are going to be orphans, and he does it, that didn't come from the light of the soul. That's not enough to get. The light of the soul is not going to get you to give up your life for God. That's just not enough. When you're put to the wall, crushed like that, something deeper is happening.
So
What's happening?
Why were they all like
The
that?
essence is being revealed. Huh?
Why were they all like that during
One second.
Right.
In the continuation of this discourse, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain what is this essence of the soul. That's we get from 5 and on is the bread is the bread and butter of this. We're just getting into we're just touching the surface over here. From 5 and on, we're getting into the to the nitty to the nuts and bolts of this mimer. So let's be patient. Yeah. What was your question?
Why, during this time, were they all willing to self-sacrifice, and at other times they were not? Why?
Who says they weren't?
Well,
There were many times in history where the Jews were not.
Greeks,
They
Romans,
converted.
Oh, you mean
And
the conversion, the mass
they weren't.
conversion?
They weren't willing to. Their essence wasn't.
Yeah,
there.
why, do you want to hear the answer?
So,
It's individual.
I don't know, but it could be
but
they didn't have.
everybody did it at this time.
Over
Why?
here, every Jew was ready for
not
self-sacrifice.
at the time. Even
Because
the children.
I'll tell you why. The Rebbe talks about it. He explains it later. In that time, the Moshe of the generation was in touch with every single Jew.
Mortified?
Yeah.
Connected.
He was connected to every Jew in a revealed way. In other times, the Moses was not connected in a revealed way. Where do you get this power to give your life up to God? Who reveals the essence of your soul? Who reveals the essence of your soul? Who does that for you? Moshe does it for you. He shepherds you with faith. He's the shepherd of faith. He brings your faith to a new level. He reveals the essence of the soul. But in order for that to happen, you have to have a relationship with Moshe. In the times of Mordechai, Moshe Rabbeinu was in touch with every single Jew. Mordechai, in other words. Other times it wasn't that way.
So the Spanish Inquisition.
Exactly. You're right.
Who was the?
I'm not even sure who it was.
Who was it?
I can't even make a determination. Who was the Moshe Rabbeinu of that generation? In 1492. You had great rabbis, but I'm not sure exactly who the one Moshe Rabbeinu was. I don't know, did Arizal live then yet?
I don't think
If Arizal lived then it was him. Undoubtedly. But I'm not sure if Arizal was even alive then. When was Arizal living? in the 15th, in the 16th century, I think.
I think,
What?
I don't remember.
And the Arizal was the Moshe of his generation, no question about that. There were other great, but I don't know. Maybe the Abarbanel was during. Dan Isaac Abarbanel was during the Spanish Inquisition in Spain, and he got kicked out of Spain. He left. He was a great source of inspiration for many Jews. But I don't know. Maybe he wasn't at that level. I don't know.
But I don't understand if this was at this level. Why isn't it in the Torah? Why was there a whole separate book on it?
Because it's post-Bible. It's post-Moses. It's 900 years after Moses. It happened after Moshe, way after Moshe left. Moshe passed. The Torah, the 5 books of Moses. This happened 900 years afterwards.
1534 to 1572.
That's the Arizal. Okay, there you have it. So he wasn't in. Now, let's finish up this page. However, the Rebbe asks, from the sequence of ideas in the discourse of the previous Rebbe, with the interpretation of the words crushed for the luminary, follows the idea of the shepherd of faith, it seems that the concept of crushed for the luminary pertains also to the fact that Moshe feeds and sustains the faith, causing it to be felt consciously. I ran ahead. I explained it already based on what the Rebbe is going to say later, that it's Moshe who reveals the essence of the neshama. But that wasn't yet explained here. So the Rebbe says the fact that in the previous Rebbe's discourse, the explanation of the words crushed for the luminary, that puts us in touch with a higher level of the neshama, where it's juxtaposed to his explanation about the job of Moshe, which is to shepherd the Jewish people with faith. It seems that there's a connection between those two. Let's see what it is. You follow? Chapter 5, page 46. This can be explained, and I want you to, this is a very important couple of chapters over here. This can be explained based on the following well-known idea that Jews believe in divinity with simple faith, needing no evidence for 2 reasons. Jews believe in God with simple faith, and they don't need any evidence for this. Why? There's 2 reasons given. Firstly, because their mazel sees it.
Their mazel?
Their mazel sees it. Right. In order to know what that means, first of all, the simple meaning of these words, let's read note 68. These are words of the Talmud. Mazel, the Talmud cites the book of Daniel, chapter 10, 7:1. Chapter 10, verse 7. Over there it says, I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, but the people that were with me did not see it. Yet a great fear fell upon them, and they fled into hiding. They didn't see the revelation, but they all trembled and they ran. What happened there? The Talmud identifies those who were with Daniel as Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi, who, although prophets themselves, were not on the level of Daniel and therefore could not see the vision he saw. The Talmud then asks, if they did not see it, why were they frightened? Right? You follow the question?
Yeah.
And the answer is, and the Talmud answers, though they did not see it, their mazel saw. Ravina commented, the great sage Ravina commented, learn from this that one who becomes frightened for no apparent reason, it is because, though he did not see it, the cause of his fear, his mazel did see it. In other words, although a person is not consciously aware of his mazel, he is affected by what the mazel experiences. Thus, if the mazel is afraid, the person will be afraid down here as well. If the mazel is inspired, the person will suddenly be inexplicably feel inspired. The mazel, therefore, because of its superior vision, guides the person through certain decisions, causing him to choose the path that will best serve his ultimate purpose. The mazel, what is this mazel? The mazel, the Baal Shem Tov explained, is a part of the soul that hears the various heavenly declarations, such as return children. Every day a heavenly voice comes out and says, return children. Who hears it? You hear it? No, but your mazel hears it. The part of your soul that remains above hears it. And through its inspiration, the soul in the body can be inspired as well. Otherwise, what purpose do these declarations serve if no one hears it anyway? It is called mazel, a word that can connote flowing, since the energy of the mazel flows to the part of the soul that inhabits the body. It is loftier than the level of an angel. As Rabbi Chaim Vital writes, the highest level of all is the revelation of one's own soul, which is loftier even than the revelation of Elijah the prophet. In order to sense the messages of the mazel, however, one must refine one's material self. Okay, so what is mazel? Mazel is referring to that part of your soul that is up in heaven, and when that hears a heavenly voice, and it sees things that the soul down here does not see, it gives a little shake, yeah? It gives a little, and inspires the soul down here as well to get you to move, to do the right thing, and so on and so forth. So he says it back on top. Let's see back on top. So Jews believe in God for two reasons. They don't need to be. They don't need evidence for two reasons. One, first, because their mazel sees it. Then the neshama sees God. The neshama up there sees God. The part of the soul that is on high sees divinity with super rational vision. And this causes the part of the soul that is vested in the body, within the body, to believe in divinity, to believe in God. When you see something, you need evidence.
No.
I saw a wondrous thing. You saw something unbelievable. You come home that day and you tell your wife or your husband, your children, you know what I saw today? And right there's a professor, a scientist, and starts telling you, Robin, it's impossible you saw that. The weather patterns, the ear, the oxygen, it's impossible you saw such a thing today. Based on what I know, the world, my scientific knowledge. It can't be that you had such a vision, that you saw this thing. And you say to the professor, with all due respect to your scientific knowledge, but I saw it. I don't need any evidence, scientific evidence that such a thing could happen, because I actually saw the thing happen. When you see things, you don't need evidence. When you don't see, you need evidence. But when you see it, you don't need evidence, yeah?
Yeah.
That alone is the evidence.
What is the connection between this mazal that you say, and when you say mazal tov to somebody, and when you say, well, you wish somebody that he gets a good mazal? So what is
I'm not sure if it's, some connection probably.
Is that the same? It does the same meaning of the word, or is it a different thing?
Same meaning. The meaning is flowing. It should be good things should flow for you from heaven. So the word mazel means flow. What we're talking about over here is that the inspiration from this mazel up there flows down to you. It drips down to you and inspires you down here. So a Jew doesn't need evidence from a good professor and a scientist or a rabbi to prove to him that God exists, because his mazel sees it. I don't need to be explained anything because I see it. Our neshama sees it. That's pretty powerful, no? That's a lower level. There's even a higher level. Another explanation given is that this faith stems from the essence of the soul, which transcends the level of their mazel sees it. The faith comes from the etzem, from the essence of your neshama. The essence of the neshama doesn't have to see it. Why? So what convinces the essence of the neshama that God exists? It doesn't see it. It doesn't have to. What is it? How does this work? He explains. For For the bond of the soul's essence with divinity is an innate bond that does not depend on any cause, not even super-rational vision. Do you need proof that your heart exists? Do you see your heart? Do you need to see it to know that you're alive? Do you need to see your brain? I don't need to see this. It is me. I am. That's who I am. I don't need to look in the mirror to be convinced that Rabbi Spalter exists. I feel myself. That's who I am. I don't have to see myself. I can close my eyes for 120 years and I know I exist. Because I am. This is who I am. A neshama doesn't need to see God. Because he is God. It's a part of Hashem. When someone sees something, it becomes absolute reality for him. But when you are something, that's even more absolute reality. A Yid's connection to God is absolute because not because he sees it. Seeing means it's something else. And I saw it. By a Yid, it's not something else. It's the very self. It can be said, look at the next page, it can be said that one of the distinctions between these two explanations, what's the difference between these two? Whether you see it or you are it, what's the difference? What's the distinction between these two explanations or two levels is that the faith of the body-bound part of the soul that stems from the vision of the heaven-bound part of the soul is an abstract faith. For the heaven-bound part of the soul transcends manifestation. Its effect on the soul clothed in the body is therefore abstract as well. What's the mazel? We just said the mazel is up there, right? And it sees things. And then it drips down, inspirations and tells to the soul part down here, hey, I see this, go ahead and behave accordingly, right? Why is that part of the soul in heaven, not in the body? What's it doing in heaven? Why doesn't it enclose in the body?
Replenishing from God.
No, it never is enclosed in the body. It's not replenishing. It's always up there and it's never down here. That's the part of the soul that never encloses itself in the body. You know why? Because it's too lofty to be enclosed in the body. It's too high a level for it to enclose itself in the body. So therefore, any inspiration that comes from it also remains, in a sense, a bit above the body. It's always an abstract level. It's abstract, and everything that comes from it is abstract. To be more precise, there are 5 levels of the soul. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. The first 3 levels are the ones that are enclosed in the soul. The 4th level is the mazel, Chaya. That remains above. And from there we get our faith, because that level sees God. But because Chaya is too abstract, it's too lofty to be enclosed in the soul, so even the inspiration that comes from that level also is an inspiration that's somewhat abstract. Yechida is the essence of the soul. When you say essence, it's the essence of everything. It's the essence of all the parts of the soul. So it's the essence of the part of the soul that's enclosed in my body also. So the inspiration that comes from the essence is not abstract. Whereas the inspiration that comes from Chaya, that part of the mazel, is abstract. To be more specific, if you see me speaking to God, let's say you see me today, one day, you see me speaking to God. You're going to be convinced that I'm a holy person, right? That I'm a man of God. or if you see God. Does that make you give your life up for something that you saw? Just because you saw something, does that mean you're going to give up your life for that which you saw?
No.
All seeing does is, it makes you're convinced that it exists. But I'm also convinced that I exist. I'm also in existence that's important. So why should I put away my existence for the existence I saw? I see myself also. I'm also an important existence. In other words, when you see something, you're not ready to give up your life for it. You're convinced that it exists. You're going to have faith that that exists, no question about it. You're convinced. But you're not ready to die for it. But if you are that very thing itself, it's not that you see it. That is you. For yourself, you're ready to die. So the essence of the neshama, when that's revealed, it's beyond seeing. You are Hashem. For that, you're ready to give up your life. That's who you are. Of course, you can give up. You can do everything for yourself, even die. So that's not abstract anymore. That inspires self-sacrifice. The essence of the neshama. Because that's not the part of the soul that sees God and therefore it's committed. You're committed up to a certain level, up to a certain point when you see it. If that's why you're convinced that it exists. But when it's the very self, that's you. When you realize God is not something that's true because I've seen it. God is true. That is that's who I am. That's my real essence. You can't deny that. You can't deny that. So you go till the end. But for that you have to have the essence revealed. Who does that? Who reveals your essence? Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the function of Moshe Rabbeinu. He shepherds the Jewish people with faith. What does that mean? He feeds us faith. He doesn't create in us a neshama. We have the neshama. He makes it visible. Not visible. He reveals that part of your neshama in you. He puts you in touch with that part of the neshama. That's the meaning of Veata Tetzaveh. You will connect. Moshe connects the Jewish people with the infinite light of Hashem. What does it mean he connects? All he has to do is press the right button in you and your neshama, your essence is revealed. That's the essence of Hashem. And when that's revealed, you can't deny it. There's no denying that. You go to your death for that. That was the function of Mordechai in the time of Purim. And that's why everyone was ready to give up their life. Even the kids, it says. And that's the reason that Rebbe is going to end this chapter, or next one. He's going to talk about the previous. Okay, we'll get there. It's a little late now. But that's the crux of this paragraph, of this chapter, chapter 5, right? Yeah. The difference between the mazel sees it and the essence experiences it. What you see, you don't necessarily experience. What you are, you experience. I'm not a human being. I'm a godly being. My neshama is a piece of Hashem. So what goes way beyond, I saw God, and therefore I'm convinced He exists. So those are the two reasons why Jews don't need evidence that God exists. They believe with simple faith. Because when you see something, you don't need evidence, but it's deeper than that. They are a piece of Hashem. But for that, you need to reveal the essence. And that's the job of Moshe Rabbeinu.